Sometimes you wonder, why am I doing this? It's so complicated. And you're about to give up. Well, welcome to my channel. This video is just for you. But before that, hi, I'm Marian. I'm a candle maker and small business owner. And here on YouTube, I share all my tips and tricks to make better candles. And this video is all about troubleshooting candle making for decorative candle. And I'm going to tackle 3 of the most common challenges that you're going to face while making candle. Before we go any further, have you subscribed to the channel yet? Click the button below and don't forget to give a thumbs up. If you like this content, it tells me what you want to see more of. It's super helpful to plan my content and my ideas for videos. Without further ado, let's tackle the 3 things that I've identified as the main challenges that candle makers are facing while making pillar decorative candles. So let's start with number 1, bubbles. My advice is always to strive for perfection and for the best product you can. However, I know as much as you know that when you make a candle shape for the first time, you're going to encounter bubbles. And this is going to happen because of 2 major factors. The main one is going to be wax temperature. Controlling your wax temperature and making sure that you're pouring not too cold is going to help you manage your air bubbles. What I mean is, when you're pouring, example, I'm going to use the wax that I'm using, which is Carousel Pillar Blend. You've got the link in the description below. The melting temperature is 75 degrees, so I always melt it up to 75, pour it in a pitcher and let it cool down to around 69, 68 degrees. I found is the best temperature that works with my studio situation, which means the temperature of my own studio, etc. 68, 69 is the sweet spot for me. So I keep measuring. Having an infrared thermometer is your best friend, and you really want to get into that habit of always checking your wax temperature at any given time. If you pour too cool, and it can be too cool at 65, for example, 65 could be too cool. For example, if your room is a bit cooler than usual, this could mean that air bubbles are gonna form. Now, I've poured thousands of candles in my candle maker career so far, so I actually can tell if the wax is too cool without even taking the temperature. Just looking in my pitcher, looking at the consistency of my wax and looking whether some bubbles are already forming from just pouring the wax from my melter to my pitcher. If I can see those bubbles staying, it's probably because my wax is too cool. So controlling your temperature is the first thing you can do to fix air bubble. The second thing you can do is warm up your molds with a heat gun. If you do not have a heat gun, I would say invest in one. I've got my shop link in the description below as well, so you can find all you need on Amazon, for example. So heating up your mold is a second idea. A third one is to always tap your mold. I know it sounds a bit silly because candle wax is liquid, right? And very it's very runny. It's not like concrete, for example, or jasmonite. But if you've been trying and dabbing into other crafts such as jasmonite or casting in general, you know that there's a technique used in casting called tapping to make sure all the air bubbles that are trapped in the cast are gonna go all the way up and pop at the surface. You've seen me doing it in lots of my own video where I use a metal straw or any kind of metal, small metal instrument, really. A spoon, a long spoon, for example, could work. And I tap my candles, not like a brute, obviously, just gently, and usually in between 2 molds. So when my molds are next to each other, I'm gonna tap like this in between, and this releases a lot of air bubbles. Technique number 4? Yeah, tips number 4 for air bubble is to coat your mold. Coating your mold is time consuming, but it also makes your production more effective because you're gonna have less imperfect candles. Coating your mold, I would suggest when you have a complex mold. It could be that it's ribbed or it has a lot of holes and detailing on the surface of the mold. Lots of nooks and crannies really that the wax sometimes just doesn't get in, and air bubble are preventing the wax to go all the way. In those situations, I would suggest pouring wax slightly hotter than your usual pouring temperature. In this example, I would probably suggest for Carousel Pillar Blend to go at 70 degrees and pour, maybe depending on the size of your mold obviously, but maybe a quarter of the size of the mold into the mold, and then gently coat, and using your hands just incline the mold and make sure that you're coating every single inch of the mold with wax before pouring the rest. This will create a coat of wax that is going to solidify faster, and this will allow you a better quality candle. Here are 4 tips for you that will definitely help you with air bubbles. Second issue we're going to troubleshoot today is a sinkhole. Sinkholes are very common. It can happen with any type of mold, even though it's more likely to occur when you're using a candlestick mold or a very tall and narrow type of mold. Sinkholes happen because of temperature and the propension to your wax to contract when it cools down. So depending on your wax, some wax can have that shrinking effect more than others, and it's usually down to temperature. So the first thing to check is go back to basics and check instruction of the wax maker. What is the exact melting temperature and pouring temperature for each wax? If I'm using, again, Carousel Pillar Blend as an example, my melting temperature is 75 degrees Celsius and pouring temperature is around 65 degrees Celsius. I know that what works best for me, and I know it through testing, is around 69 degrees. It's because it's slightly cooler in my candle studio, so it needs to be a bit hotter. When I talk about temperature, it's also your room temperature and the consistency of it. If you've got a studio in a shed in your garden outside and you only heat it when you're there, and then during the night then it gets really cold, then this is gonna impact your candle, and most likely the cooler your studio is, the more shrinkage you're gonna get. So fixing your room temperature is as important as getting your wax temperature correct. This is the combination of both that will create the sinkholes. So the first thing to address are temperature, both wax and room temperature. One way to also prevent sinkholes is to use mold warming, whether with a heat gun or in your oven. Another option is going to be using a double pour method. It means that you're going to pour additional wax into your candle to fill the hole. The third issue that you've been flagging is demolding or wax being too soft. First thing to check is that you're using the right wax. I've got a full video here, I'll put the link here, into how to choose your wax. And it's not about I'm using paraffin or coconut wax or soy wax. It's about whether it's a container wax or a pillar wax. Every time you're making a decorative candle that comes in a mold, it has to be a pillar wax. There's plenty on the market, whether you're looking for paraffin, soy, whatever, whether in the US, in the UK, you can find lots of suppliers that are gonna offer a pillar wax alternative. It's paramount. You can't fix it. If you're using the wrong wax, the best thing you do is you change your wax. There's no two ways about it. Second thing that I can advise for demolding is don't be greedy or don't be impatient. Wait. I always give my candles at least 8 hours overnight to demold. I usually pour my candle in the evening because I do work a 9-to-5 job, so I pour in the evening and I demold in the morning, leaving my candle plenty of time to fully solidify and demold. If you're still facing issues, and this can happen mostly for acrylic mold, those ones, you may be finding yourself in a tricky situation and seeing your candles are stuck. It does happen. If it does, don't bang them or don't like heat anything. Just pop them in the fridge. Popping the candles in the fridge is gonna help the wax shrink even further and help release. Now, if you're using the correct wax and it still isn't working, I'm thinking about some very intricate candle shapes, you may want to use a silicone spray. A silicone spray can be sprayed into your silicone mold before you pour the wax and will help the wax release from the mold when it's time to demold. I would use it as a last resort and only when it's very intricate or you've been trying everything above and it's still not working for you. Was that helpful? I hope it was. This was my tips to troubleshoot 3 of the most frequent issue you can find in candle making. So don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and follow for more. I'll see you very, very soon. Bye bye.